Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel for a hot topic that I need to discuss because I quite often get thrown under the bus, maybe correctly, maybe not correctly, it depends which way you want to look at it. Mason Mount is the topic of this video today, it's the only topic of today's video, and I want to put it out there very early on in this video, but before I do that, please subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoy the video, and join the GBFC club. So, Mason Mount is one of my favourite Chelsea players. He's been one of my favourite Chelsea players since he broke through into the side. Why was Mason Mount one of my favourite Chelsea players? Well, first of all, he was endorsed by my favourite ever Chelsea player, Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard was my absolute hero as a child, and then growing up as well, seeing Frank Lampard do what he did. He's our all-time top goal scorer. The love and affinity that I had for Frank hit new heights when he became Chelsea's manager, and I felt as though it was a time where Chelsea Football Club once again felt like home. It felt as though with Lampard coming back, Chelsea were going to become... I felt as though I drifted away from the club a bit under Sarri, and then Mason Mount was that breakthrough player who epitomised everything that I wanted to see. And I always bring back, and this is going to be my base level explanation as to why I back Mount so much. So what I really envied of Manchester United growing up was the fact that they had so many homegrown players with a manager who the fans just adored, that gave them an identity and it gave them a dynasty to buy into. And I wanted Lampard, with the quality and brilliance of a young Mason Mount who knows everything it is to be Chelsea, who wants to be a Chelsea player. I thought that Mason Mount was going to be that with Lampard for me. So during that first season, I was also going to all of the games, home and away. So I saw firsthand, not just from looking on TV, which is how I watch Chelsea now because I live on the other side of the world, I saw firsthand just how great of a footballer Mason Mount already was 3 years ago. Recently, there have been some significantly poor performances, consistently poor performances on a significant scale, on a frequent scale, and Mason Mount has come under a lot of necessary scrutiny for his performances, and a lot of this has also been fueled by the conversations regarding his new contract. Now, by the end of this video, I want to give you my full opinion as to whether or not I think Chelsea need to give Mason Mount a new contract. Will they do it, and does he deserve it? I think that's the main question here that a lot of people are asking right now, because Mount's recent performances probably don't warrant anywhere near the kind of figures that have been touted about Mount's contract. Now, people have seen that apparently, again, I don't believe this, by the way, apparently Mason Mount wanted £300,000 per week to make him one of, if not the most highest paid Chelsea player at the club, or something like that. I think Sterling's on more. I don't believe this. I don't think Mason Mount has actually asked for this figure. Then when you start listening to that, you can believe what you want to believe. Is it true? Is it not? Regardless, it's not really important. It's not my money, so I don't really care what players are getting paid as much as some people care how much players are getting paid. I do care in the sense of, I think if you're getting that much money, you kind of can vindicate to yourself, if you're that player, it's okay, at least I'm still getting paid if you're not putting performances in, which is an attitude I absolutely can't stand, and I really hope that Chelsea players don't do that. And I think a lot of them maybe do at times because, well, we do pay a lot of high wages. But Mason Mount, the performances have not been good enough. In the final third, decision-making's been poor. I think one thing I've never been able to see in Mount, but recently we have, no shots on target, no attempted take-ons in the last 2 games, which is alarming. And it shows to me a player who is totally void of confidence. And I'm going to explain why I think Mason Mount is void of confidence. And I think it's a positive, but evidently due to the performance levels, a negative. I think Mason Mount tries to take the brunt of a lot of the things that go wrong at Chelsea on his shoulders. The reason I think this is a good thing is because I think this is aspiring leadership. I think Mason Mount would love to be a Chelsea captain. I think he adores the club. I think he loves the club as a result of taking the burden of a lot of the struggles the poor performances recently, it's not a surprise to me that Mount is one of the last players to walk off the pitch. Even yesterday at Liverpool, when he knew he played badly, he's looking over at the fans, he's clapping them. Fulham away, Chelsea are beaten. So many players who don't give a shit go down the tunnel. Mount goes over, spends a minute in front of the Chelsea fans, almost consoling Chelsea fans for having to witness yet another poor performance from the entire team. He's clapping them again. Maybe at such a young age, with it being the first patch in his career where form has been seriously questionable. It is very questionable right now, Mount's form. It's not good enough. I think because this is the first time this has happened to him in his career, it's been nothing but a glow up until this point. Think about it. Vitesse hit the ground running, goes to Derby, ranting and raving. Lampard becomes Chelsea manager. He's the golden boy again, player of the year. And then he's doing it for England as well. Gareth Southgate loves him too. And now all of a sudden, he's had to go through a managerial sacking again in Thomas Tuchel. Graham Potter's come in, and I don't think it is a coincidence that as a result of Mount having to kind of be that Chelsea identity to take so much of this burden, it is impacting his performances. And I think what Mason Mount needs right now is probably a few games on the sidelines. I think as a result of this, we need to not only look at it from that psychological, emotional standpoint, where I truly believe what I just said might have a big part to play in the issues with Mount right now. But B, I do think football should be a meritocracy sometimes, and I don't think, despite me believing that Mason Mount is a huge part of Chelsea's current and future DNA, I do think the footballing performances aren't good enough and he should be dropped from the team, not only to protect the player, but also because he's not been good enough. You cannot be playing the way he's been playing recently. You know, not shooting, missing passes in the final third, poor decision making, and it's even got to a point now where he looks so frustrated on the field. We don't see that pressuring from him was the thing that triggered so many people about him in the first place. People that didn't like Mount a couple of years ago when he was scoring every week, assisting, and all of that stuff, people were just like, oh, but you know, he presses a lot, he runs, he tries hard. It's not a metric to measure football in class, we were told. But at this point in time now, the goals have dried up, the assists have dried up, and the performance levels are nowhere near good enough. So what would I do with Mason Mount? I'd drop him for now, but I'd also, Graham Potter supposedly is that man to put an arm around a player, to understand a player, and I think if he really is that man, he does drop him for a couple of games. Whether we've got injuries or not, we've got 2 weeks now off. A lot of time to nurse players back, and as a result of that, we should have more players available come the game at home to Fulham at Stamford Bridge in 2 weekends' time. As for the new contract for Mason Mount, which has been reported very heavily as a Chelsea priority, a lot of people at the club really want to see Mason Mount stay. Willett, with the recent form that has just been appalling, this whole season really, he's been poor. Let's be honest, he's been appalling recently. He's been poor all season by the standards that we have been set by the player himself from what we've seen of him all throughout his career. I think Mason Mount's still a phenomenal footballer. He's just going through a very tumultuous period right now, and I think he should be backed. I still think he does represent a lot of what being a Chelsea player should be. There might still be a lot of new fans for Chelsea Football Club here who don't know about what it's like to see players really care about Chelsea Football Club. I don't think the argument that he just doesn't care because he's not getting 300 grand a week, this doesn't sit very well with me. I don't agree with this. 300 grand a week, right now, you're not playing like a 300k a week player at this point, in my opinion. I think Mason Mount does deserve a new Chelsea contract. I do think Chelsea would be so foolish to look at the recent form and not think he deserves one, because he really does, in my opinion. And I think every player goes through a period like Mount's going through right now. Mount is going through it now. It just so happens to coincide with where all of the Chelsea players seem to have just been going through a horrible spell. Whether it's a manager or the players or not, it's still a debate up for everybody. But the club has been going through a tough time, and I think Mount has taken so much of it on his shoulders, and maybe he wasn't ready for that kind of level of responsibility, but it is a sign of strength that a player chooses to take that upon himself. That is my take on it. I know that a lot of people think I just want to defend Mount throughout everything, but the stats don't lie. He's been one of our most important, best players in recent years, and he's having a poor season, but I think virtually everyone is having a poor season too. So to scapegoat Mount as just the reason shows how good he's been before, because we relied on him before to give us big moments and great moments and to deliver goals and assists. Why? Just because now He's having a bad time. Should we just look to sell him at all costs? I don't think that's the right way. But let me know your thoughts on Mount in the comments down below. There's no right or wrong answer. It's all opinions. This is my opinion. Don't crucify me for it. But I think Chelsea would be so much worse off for getting rid of Mason Mount. See you guys in another video later where we're still going to be talking central midfielders, and it's a banger. Come on, you Blues.